Scott Hall has worked to develop a universal school food strategy in Maskwacis since 2014. Equipped with significant food industry experience, a culinary Red Seal certification, and teaching qualifications, he was originally hired as a foods teacher, including his students in the daily foods operation at Ermineskin Jr. Senior High School. Year after year, the program expanded to include more students and cover more locations. In 2018, Maskwacis Education Schools Commission was formed to include all 11 schools in Maskwacis. With this amalgamation, the Universal School Food Strategy was rebranded in the Cree language as Nanotok Mitsuin and expanded to serve all 2,400 students daily breakfast, lunch, and snacks. The operation has become a significant force in food sovereignty and food security for Maskwacis in general. So, ladies and gentlemen, give your hands for Scott Hall.
Thank you. It's a long way up. Have the little clicker thing. Oh, very good. Tansi, mio keksipayo. My name is Scott Hall, and I'm actually a Norwegian. I'm not from this land. I'm not Neheo. I'm an ally. However, I'm Norse background. My grandfather came over from Norway, settled in the Fort Macleod area originally, and was recruited into World War II as an airplane mechanic. He was stationed in Brandon. After the war, he moved to Swift Current, where he met my grandma, and they were all being recruited into a cooperative farming group that was for post-war opportunities, and they were sent up to northern Saskatchewan. So I was born in Carrot River, Saskatchewan, and I grew up there and Saskatoon. So this is kind of my home. Actually, my wife is doing her PhD serendipitously at U of S, and we live 4 houses down Avenue K. But we're separate right now because I'm still working in Maskwacis. So thanks for having me. Dolores, thank you for the opening prayer. Hi. So the name of the program is Nanatok Mitsuin. It means abundance, variety. That's what Nanatok means, and food. So essentially, a universal school food strategy, loosely translated, Nanatok Mitsuin. Maskwacis Education Schools Commission is our organization currently. That's our logo. And this is where we're located. If you can see the little pin, Edmonton is about 75 kilometers north of us, and Red Deer is about 75 kilometers south of us. So we're about smack dab in the middle of Edmonton and Red Deer. It's comprised of 4 nations: Montana, Louisbourg, Sampson, and Ermineskin. Or Muskinakanipuit, Kispatnak, Nipsikopak, and Ermineskin. There's approximately 13,000 registered band members currently living there, but we know that there's more like 20,000 people that live in the 4 nations. And this number, the 2,400 students, that's a ballpark from last year in terms of enrollments. However, we've increased this year 15%, so we're about 2,700 students currently enrolled. I would like to mention the original treaty land for the 4 nations of Maskwacis was significantly larger than it currently is. It's an interesting piece of history. Let me just show you. So when the treaties were signed, So when the treaties were signed, the original treaty land was actually a 1-day horseback ride from Bittern Lake all the way to Pigeon Lake, and then down to Gull Lake, and then over to Red Deer Lake, and then back up. So that was the original treaty lands. And in the years immediately after the treaties were signed, speculators came in, and the land was being sold off. To what we have remaining today, which I think the sales of the land stopped around 1912, around there. Don't quote me on that, but this is all oral history that I've collected over the last decade or so working in Maskwacis. So we have a school actually out in Pigeon Lake, but we're like, that's 60 kilometers away. It's a little piece of reserve left we call the beach. Here's a little news clip that was done 5 years ago that I'd like to play just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, a bird's eye view. I can also narrate the video. Okay, so this is our Ermineskin Jr. Senior High School. It's located in Maskwacis. This is Brian Wildcat. He's our superintendent. He's our fearless leader. He just retired this year, but he's actually still on as a consultant. These are our students working in the kitchen. That's some bread that I made with them that morning. And I'm being interviewed right now talking about the school food program and kind of the importance of it in terms of nutrition. This is Keen Janvier. He wanted to be a chef. He passed away last year. There's Charlie roasting. There's me talking about why it's important that students have proper nutrition on a daily basis, access to nutrient-dense food in school, because you got to feed your belly before you can feed your mind, right? It's the most basic of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? This is a typical lunch line. We actually don't serve milk anymore in the schools. There's our salad bar in action. Tamara Wildcat, she's one of our Board of Governors. She's still on as a board member for MESC. That's a typical salad bar on a daily basis at lunchtime. Everything's made from scratch. Like I said, we don't serve milk anymore in the schools. This was before the new Canada Food Guide. But that's it. So if you want to listen to it, you can find it on CBC forever.
I'll provide you the link.
It's all good. It's all good. No, I surprised you with the video, so it's all good. So I'll go back to the next one. So the vision of the original program, it's not my vision. I was actually teaching in Thailand as an English teacher in 2011 when my wife and I decided to move back to Canada. And so my wife got a job in Wetaskiwin as a band teacher, or the band director. And she said, I won't take the contract unless you find something that would work for you. And I had about 10 years in the food industry leading up to getting my teaching degree on Vancouver Island. And so I was looking for a kind of a foods-related position in a school, and something popped up at Ermineskin. I didn't even know where Ermineskin was. And it was Hobbema at the time. I'd never heard of Hobbema. I grew up in Saskatchewan, didn't spend any time in Alberta. But I did a bunch of research and said, that's right up my alley. And I did the interview with Brian and one of the principals of the school, and they were talking about chickens and farming and providing food for all the students. And I thought, well, that's beautiful. That's exactly what I want to do. And so I took the job, and the vision of the board was to have a school food program that meets essential nutritional needs of all students from kindergarten to grade 12. We started at the junior, senior high level the first year because I guess you can't, Rome wasn't built in a day. So the goal was to do K to 12. That took about 4 years. And to celebrate Nehiyaw culture and values through food. Facilitates career learning pathways of culinary students, so the academic or CTS component, career technology studies component, and building community relationships through locally sourced food. I kind of plug that one because the model, I have background in the food industry, and I know Cisco and GFS don't really care about anybody but themselves and profit, and it's really important to invest in our producers that are like living here and growing food and having trouble to get it to market. So building those community relationships is a significant part of our universal school food strategy. And to support families in multiple ways. So food security, these words we throw around all the time. more like food sovereignty and food security in the same thing. So we own all of our logistical inputs, and we ultimately build community food security broadly. So in a little bit of history, 1996 to 2006, local control of education was handed over, I believe 1995, something like this. Ermineskin schools started as under the district Mio Wokotuan, which means good kinship, Mio Wokotuan Education Authority. And in 2001, this school was opened. It was the junior senior high school, and a few years later they built the elementary school. But originally students had no access, even though they built a kitchen in the center of the school, and a beautiful commercial kitchen. It was never used. So it was identified, it's always been identified as an issue that we need to address. That's why they built a school with a kitchen in it, but nobody knew how to use the kitchen. So we brought in Howie, who had a Chinese food restaurant down the road, and he would bring in rice and ribs and sell them for $5 a clamshell. Well, if you're selling rice and ribs for $5 a clamshell, there's a couple things. First off, you're selling the food, so you're creating disparity right out the gate. And then rice and ribs on a daily basis is not nutritionally dense. Right? It's easy. And the easy button in the food industry is quite common. So anyway, so initiatives sort of came and went for about 6 years. Counselors and well-meaning teachers would be spending their own hard-earned money on food and hopefully get reimbursed for it. But on a large scale, nothing was really very successful. Like they had vending machines, they had a candy store. One of the teachers had like a candy store. They were selling candy at lunch, and then otherwise kids would walk down to the gas station, which was about 6 blocks away, and then come back late, like every day. So all these little initiatives that we see happening, these ad hoc things, these unplanned sort of September, we need to feed the kids. Let's go buy a bag of apples and some muffins. All those things, they're Band-Aids, and they're not an effective solution. So in 2013, we started the Universal School Food Strategy, and that was based actually on a document that was published that year, or maybe it was the year before, by the Alberta Centre for Chronic Disease Prevention. And they identified that for every dollar invested into children's nutrition in schools is a $20 savings in a lifetime of healthcare expenses. So they designed sort of this and proposed this universal school food strategy, which I latched on in the beginning when I was kind of looking for models. Now, there are no models of the universal school food strategy. We just had an idea and a framework. So the first year, I kind of took the idea and the framework, and I approached the board, and we had $67,000 to feed 315 students. I was the foods teacher. I took all the students out of the home ec room and put them in the commercial kitchen. I envisioned it sort of like NATE, like it was more like it's a career training rather than home ec, which is kind of passé. We're trying to raise professionals. Essentially, we were very successful that first year. We introduced a salad bar. I cut out any kind of relationships we had in the community with Cisco and GFS in the first few months, because I knew that we would blow our budget by December if we had used they're not wholesalers, by the way, so they pretend to be, but they're not wholesalers. Your local farmer is more of a wholesaler than Cisco and GFS. So we bought salad bars for the high school, and that took about 2 or 3 weeks for those to really take off, but it was a bit of a learning curve, but they're super successful. And then we got rid of all the vending machines, eliminated the marketing of unhealthy food to children, and I was using the policy document from the Alberta Centre for Chronic Disease Prevention. That document I used as the framework for the policy. of the first year there. So the following year, we were asked to feed the 425 grade 1 to 6 students next door at the elementary school, basically across the parking lot. And to do that, like, I was a teacher, and I had one EA assigned, and I had 15 kids per class, and I had 4 classes a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So I only had one EA, and I had probably 30 kids in the morning total coming in through the kitchen. So we were successfully able to feed 300 people, no problem. And so to add that additional 425, there's no way that I could go deliver the food next door to the elementary school. We had to hire another person, then I had to plan. We had to plan. So we had to plan, and budget and secure funding for a distribution van, distribution equipment, like Cambro holding boxes, warming boxes, and then some service utensils over there and carts and things that we needed, because 425 little kids were not going to all come down to the gathering area in one swell foop, right? Spoonerism. So we were distributing to the classrooms for the little kids, and then so grade 1 to grade 3, we distributed carts to the different pods in the classrooms, and there was about 3 or 4 classes per grade. And then we'd have the older kids come down to the gathering area in two waves. So this, initial year, like on September 2nd, first day of school, we had all these teachers and EAs, and it was just a gong show for like a week, trying to sort out all of the bugs. And it's not going to be easy, but nothing worth doing is easy. So we figured it out, and we had to have 2 staff there to distribute food to 425 kids. Breakfast took about an hour and a half for distribution and cleanup. And then the employees came back to the high school, which was the hub kitchen where all the food was prepared. And then we'd have lunch done. We'd send it out about 11:30, and it would be distributed to the elementary school, and they would basically do breakfast again. So that worked out after about a month or so, working out the bugs, open communication with the leadership. Super important to have principals like biggest fans, because everybody has an opinion of food and what they like, especially elementary school teachers. They like to believe they know exactly what the kids like and don't like, but it's not their job to decide for the kids. It's their job to expose the kids to healthy food, right? So the principals rein in the teachers. It's really important, especially when you have, I think we have 50 or so staff at the elementary school, right? So 50 teachers and educational assistants all having opinions about food. They need to get filtered through the hierarchy, right? So it's important to plan this stuff. Very important to plan. The following year, so this is the 3rd year into it, Ermineskin Jr Senior High School food program became Ermineskin Universal School Food Strategy. Finally, we hit the kindergarten or grade 12 because we added the little tykes. We introduced food services at the adjacent kindergarten. There was about 200 or so, 225 kindergartners, but they were only in for a half day, so it was modified menu, and we provided snacks all morning, and it was a little bit different. So but we're still preparing all the food from scratch in the one kitchen, distributing it to the elementary school, and distributing to the kindergarten. So meanwhile, in the background, I'm just a teacher, but I'm running around in the evenings and weekends, and I'm making deals with farmers and getting to know local people that are producing food and finding the best bang for our buck. Essentially, like, this is, I'm an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, but healthy, affordable food for everybody is what we need to be arguing for, right? So that's that. Some people might think if you shop locally, it's more expensive. Well, not when you're spending $250,000 at your local farmer, a year. That's how much we spend on meat from we get like 100% of our meat from a local Hutterite colony. They have a world-class meat processing facility that was just completed last year. But I've been working with them for 10 years. And they are very invested in our success, and we're invested in their success. So we have those strong community partnerships. They're about 15 minutes away from the northernmost tip of Sampson and Ermineskin, so it's a lot of our community members shop there, and they're treated very well with respect, right? So those local partnerships, I feel, are really important. I'll talk about them again, reference them again later on during the pandemic. They came in handy. So the following year, we just kind of coasted. We started doing events and community celebrations. We started catering the powwows. I'd bring in an army of students, and I'd pay them because we would, it's hard work, and they would basically cook all night long, and we'd pump out like 3,000 sandwiches and cookies and this, that, and the other thing, and it would be provided at the year-end powwow for free. And we've been doing that every year. COVID kind of took a little bit of a break, but we got back at it last year. And this year again, we're expanding all of our events again, and people are going on field trips again, and so we're supporting all those things. So all those extra little things we started to add on. And that's when we were still under the Mio Okotoan Education Authority. We had 4 schools total. There was the Ermineskin Jr. Senior High School, there was the Ermineskin Elementary School, there was the Ermineskin Kindergarten, and then there was an outreach school, which it was like an alternate school. And so there was like maybe 30, 40 kids there, and we just delivered food over there and dropped it off. So when I first started the presentation, I mentioned there's Sampson, Louisville, Ermineskin, and Montana. That's 4 nations. So what were they doing? Well, I didn't even go to Sampson, Ermineskin, or Sampson, Louisville, and Montana for the first 4 or 5 years. I didn't even know where the Sampson High School was. I only went to Ermineskin because that's where I worked. Well, the stars were aligning. Little did I know that all the superintendents were working together because they're like, we love the funding model that Ermineskin had, as a particular funding model that had locked in funding. It allowed us to allocate resources in a very effective way. And the planning structure, the district-wide operational planning structure that was in place in Ermineskin was outstanding. Nobody else was doing it. So that allowed for like long-term planning and budgetary allocation that reflected the actual needs of the school district. So the planning cycle was really important that we had. And so the other districts were thinking, well, we want, we're all Maskwacis, so that's the people of Maskwacis. And we should have equal opportunities for all students in Maskwacis. So talks began about an amalgamation of all 4 nations' education systems, which require the chiefs to sign off control over education onto a board of governors, and we have an elder board. So the chief signed off in 2018, and we officially became Maskwacis Education Schools Commission. And we went from 4 schools to we have now 11 schools. Now, along with that, the superintendents pulled me into the office one day, and they said, we're going to be amalgamating this year, and that was February, I think, of 2018. And they said in the fall, we're going to need to feed every student in MESC. And I said, well, we could do that. That's a lot of kids. It's like 2,400 kids. Multiple different sites. I don't even know what they have for kitchens, so I started driving around, and I put 75,000 kilometers on my brand new truck in like 6 months. I was taking food to these schools. Every one of the schools had some form of a feeding thing. So some of them just did breakfast, some did just lunch, and some did a combination of whatever they could scrounge up. But I started to relieve them of that having to purchase groceries and started to buy weekly fruits and vegetables and granola bars and things that could offset some of the needs, and building those relationships. So I did that for about 6 months. And then September rolled around, and we hit the ground running. So we began our department. Is called Nanatak Mitsuin. It was named, was given a formal name, and it was formed in a department within Maskwacis Education Schools Commission, Business Services. So we weren't part of learning services. We weren't part of like O&M or anything. We were part of business services. So my boss is associate superintendent of business services. So our main goals as a department were to meet the nutritional requirements of all students from K to 12, provide career pathways to students through curriculum implementation and apprenticeship opportunities to the registered apprenticeship program, build partnerships with local producers, and celebrate traditional Nahia ways through food. So all those years of building up the program, I realized that we needed, for such a large operation with multi-different sites, you need to have a central food distribution system, because we weren't reliant on GFS and Cisco or other national food distribution companies. We had our own system. I had a van, and I'd go down to Red Deer or Edmonton, and I'd procure everything myself. And then when we expanded, we once again, yearly operational plans. I detailed exactly what we needed to do in order to meet the needs, the logistical needs of this operation. So essentially, we needed a centrally located warehouse. Serendipitously, we found one in the mall, Ermineskin Mall, and it used to be a grocery store. It was Big Way Foods for a long time. And then it was empty pretty much, except a bunch of mall junk. Needed some renovations, we took care of that. And we were able to build this centrally located warehouse with enough capacity to store 1 week's worth of food for 2,400 kids, breakfast, lunch, and snacks. Cold storage, we had to install I can't remember the square foot of the walk-in cooler. It's big. We can fit 16 pallets in there and still have walking room. And then we have a walk-in freezer as well. But it's just enough capacity actually to feed breakfast, lunch, and snacks to 2,400 kids for 1 week. And you'll see the pictures. I think I have some pictures. There's the dry goods aisle. This is during COVID, so you can see this is where the dry goods are. So we had 1 year of success as Maskwacis Education Schools Commission, and it was awesome, and we're on top of the world. We had a barbecue team set up to go into a barbecue competition. Some of these kids were going into school, and they were registering their apprenticeship hours, and the system was we were seeing kids going into the culinary industry post-graduation. Some of them we rehired, like this gentleman up there with the chef's jacket. His name's Will. He worked with us right out of high school. I'm a baker, so we do all our bread from scratch. That's what he's doing with all that dough. But COVID hit, and I'm going to talk about, I know you guys probably are sick of hearing about COVID, but it's a really interesting extension of the school food program in the community of Maskwacis. We have this warehouse, this food warehouse, right? And like literally January 14th, my distribution guy purchased like 10,000 pounds of produce. And we were told that we were going to be closed on Monday. That was Friday, we picked it up. We're going to be closed on Monday. What are you going to do with all this produce? We had watermelons and, grapes and everything. So there was all this talk over the weekend. District emergency management teams were formed, represented by each nation and managed by Maskwacis Health Services. It was like chaos for like 3 or 4 days, and all these different organizations started cropping up, and everybody, all these authorities, and the district emergency management team on the Sunday. So we were told about this COVID thing on like the Friday. It was like St. Patrick's Day weekend, and then on the Monday or Sunday night, we said we're closing all the schools indefinitely, probably for the year, right? So what are we going to do? We still have to feed the kids. We have to also send learning packages home or something. So and then the 10,000 pounds of fresh produce that needed to be distributed like in days. So we worked closely with Maskwacis Health Services, which is also another amalgamated organization in Maskwacis, 4 nations, 1 health authority. We worked closely with them, their medical transport. We were able to deliver food hampers to all the homes with children. And the food was just, everybody loved it. It was like everybody loves food in Maskwacis. So I had some pictures there, they didn't load. But so during the early days of the pandemic, MES restructured its food warehouse to accommodate the rapid assembly of food hampers due to the growing need for community intervention. Basically, after that first week of distributing all that produce, we were approached by various people wondering if we could help them procure produce and meats and things. And at the same time, people, remember, they were being told to stay home, and security checkpoints were cropping up everywhere. Yeah. Smudge Pan. Do you ever watch that Smudge Pan with this security check? And it was pretty funny. So anyway, the Dems asked our organization, MESC, to assist with logistics and the procurement of goods. If you can remember, there was all the panic buying, so retail pack items were virtually non-existent. So how do you build hampers out of a 20-kilogram bag of flour and a 20-kilogram bag of oats and a 20-kilogram bag of rice? Because that's all that was available. Like wholesale packs was all that was available. So we had to set up repacking stations. We opened up the Samson Arena, and we trained all the staff there on how to, like food safety. And I'm a food safety training instructor as well. But we set up kind of the system. We did spreadsheets in terms of what goes in hampers. We proposed that, obviously, in the days. This is all happening in the first week of the pandemic. We put together this food hamper system, and it consisted, for a family of 5, we had 1 box of dry goods, 1 box of produce, and 1 box of frozen meats and things. Got some pierogies in there because Chimo's up in Edmonton. We buy pierogies from Chimo. But it was very well received by the nations first, and then they started adding, the nations started adding their own stuff, cleaning supplies and everything, and toilet paper, and we were buying that stuff, we were procuring it because we had the logistical wherewithal to do that. We have the trucks, we have 3 distribution trucks, refrigerated ones, a 24-foot, and we have 2 16-foot Isuzus. And we were able to help with the food security operation. Yeah, and some of the cool things that we were able to get for retail packs in terms of meat from Pine Haven Colony. We were able to work with them on developing products to go into the hampers, and it was a really quick turnaround, so we got some, like individual packaged back bacon and some sausages, and we even made this product called Maskwacis steak, which is like a little tube of German bologna. It was great. And it was really well received. So that was really cool because we had that partnership. We had all those years working with Pine Haven, bringing meats into the schools, and they're our neighbors, and they were very happy to help us with filling these hampers. So hampers were distributed to all residents bi-weekly and included cleaning supplies and other items the bands felt were relevant. And then, so that was 2020, right? So we were planning for the fall. So that was the last few months, from March to June, we were doing this hamper thing, and then we were into our yearly operational plan again. How are we going to re-enter the school year, right? And what kind of things do we need? So, so if you remember, surface transmission was still not discredited. Everybody thought if you touched something, you had to leave it out for 48 hours or something. So all of our learning packages had to be created and then left out for 24 hours and then distributed. And the same thing with the food. We're still feeding 2,400 kids a day, but everything had to be made the day before. So our menu completely changed to cold food. And essentially what we were doing was I had 24 cooks at the time, and we set up 2 kitchens at our 2 different high schools. And they had an assembly line, essentially, as you can see, and we had eco-pack boxes, and we do salads, and this is it was a delicious kind of like rice noodle box with some smoked pork loin and vegetables. So we'd set up and we'd make literally 2,400 of those. And then we'd put them into those green totes that you saw in the previous thing on pallets, and we'd take them to the warehouse and put them in our walk-in cooler overnight. And then a truck would take them and then redistribute them in the morning as the team is over here making food for the next day. So breakfast and lunch became cold food, right? But we were doing like bagels, I did bagels from scratch. We do this big operation for breakfast, and we throw a little thing of cream cheese in there and some fruit, and it was great. Some items that we kept on the menu, like this salad was really popular, and we did a chef salad that was really popular. And so, students were placed in cohorts, and so students were sitting in their seat in the morning, and they were there all day long, and just the teachers walked around the school, right? So food had to be delivered to the classrooms. It was a lot of work. We actually lost a lot of employees over that time. It's just a lot of work. But we didn't skip a beat. It was limited to cold food during that time, but we tried new things, and some things were really successful. And disposable, compostable eco-containers are put into use. We ended up purchasing so these eco-containers, they were like 35 cents, and then in the beginning of the pandemic, and then they shot up to almost 80 cents per unit. Right? So that's like doubling our food cost, because like our food cost for one day for breakfast, lunch, and snacks is like less than 90 cents for breakfast, lunch, and snacks. That's the food cost, because we actually buy wholesale food. But with these eco packs, that like doubled our costs. So we had all these salespeople trying to hawk us like paper cutlery or paper plates and wooden cutlery, and so we just bought from Alibaba like 1 million disposable containers for like $27,000, and which was like a fraction of the cost. It was like pennies is what it cost us. So we just got one big sea can filled. We're still working. I think we've got 600,000 or so left to get through. So I'm going directly to the source in terms of school food programs. I know this is like, what are you talking about? But you got to go directly to the source. Like George Young, remember the movie Blow? You got to go directly to the source if you want to make it profitable. But the profit isn't in money here. We're talking about the profit is bang for our buck. The more money we have to improve the menu for the students, to make the most beautiful, freshest food that we can possibly provide them, right? That's where the profit is. So when we entered the school year for 2020 in the fall, we quickly realized that the hamper model that we had for the nations and the households wasn't going to work for our students, because when we closed down, because like that, 8 closures in 2020, the school closed down, reopened, closed down, reopened, closed down, reopened, closed down, reopened, 8 times through that year. So that meant every time it closed down for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we had to like restructure everything and send food home to the kids with learning packages. Now, sending each one of these kids home with like a big box of food is just like we did it once, I think, and I think one house got like 19 boxes of food. And it was like, okay, this is not efficient, it's not gonna work. So I quickly made some calls, talked to Meals on Wheels in Edmonton, get some ideas, and they're like, yeah, we do this like thermal tray thing where ovenable trays, they're made in Holland, and it's called CPAP, or CPAC, not CPAP. CPAP's what I use for breathing at night. CPAC, or CEMAPAC. And these trays, basically they're like Michelinas, whatever, you throw them in the oven, they're not gonna burst into flames. And they have this seal, plastic seal that's also ovenable, so up to 425 degrees. So anyways, we had our chefs make these meals. We label them and send them home. 2 kilogram portion meals in ovenable trays were sent out with learning packages each week of the pandemic closure. And then we made a decision last year that we're just never going to close schools again. But we're still making those meals, and actually we're sending them home with people that need them in the community. So kids that we can throw them in their backpacks. We have a bunch of them in stock at each of the schools. We're not going to stop making those meals. And so I keep mentioning planning. We're just going to kind of switch gears here. And I think I recognize a couple of you from Meadow Lake. I saw you back at the end of August there. And at the end of that presentation, I was asked the question, how do we start? How do we get started, right? And I said, well, basically you got to, I think I jumped into it, like you got to convince your principals and talk to your administrators and executive team, and you got to include this into your yearly operational plan. That goes in for the end of basically ours is due December 10th, and then it's either projects are either approved or denied, whether they meet with the mandates of the district, and then budgets are allocated based on your operational plan. And apparently a lot of school districts don't do that. So planning is really important, and if you want to do a universal school food strategy, you got to be planning every year. And so the first question is, what is your current district-wide planning structure? There's a couple different types. One is a compliance document that comes from the top down. That's basically the governing authority, whether it's the government or whether it's a board. Will issue this compliance document, which reflects the mandates of the school district, whether it's like improving attendance or improving academic success or whatever their particular mandates are for that year. And then basically the schools kind of scramble to make that work. And then there's others have executive plans, but it doesn't trickle down to the school sites. And then some have department plans. And then if you want to go all the way down, like we have individualized plans for teachers, we have principals that do site planning, operational planning for sites, and then we have the different departments within our organization, whether it's operations and maintenance or capital projects or business services or people services, and they all have yearly operational plans that all reflect the mandates of the basically student-centered learning and all the things that the board feels is important to reach, right? So everything flows together, and then you can allocate resources based on whether they're going to actually accomplish the objectives of the district, right? That's essentially how we secured funding in the very first year, is that we said we would improve attendance because that was part of the goals, and we would improve attendance, and there would be student-centered learning and project-based learning stuff, and we just tied in, I'm a teacher, so when you look at the curriculum and you want to do a lesson, you kind of have to get creative and figure out where that lesson's going to, meet those objectives of that curriculum, right? So, but if you can do that, you can secure funding. So the importance of district-wide planning is that it includes strategic thinking and strategic planning. Those are two different things. Strategic thinking is like brilliant Elon Musk, Tupac Shakur, just like you can't contain them. They're just so brilliant, they just all over the place, exploding bubbles of brilliance. And universal school food programs can meet outcomes in district-wide operational plans, thereby becoming relevant in budgeting. And it's not just a reactionary thing. So people who do strategic thinking are always reacting to everything all the time. They need some structure to work under. So that's where strategic planning comes in. So strategic thinking, like I said, is like brainstorming, epiphanies, brilliance in general, but it's off the cuff and off the fly. And typically school food champions, in my experience, have been kind of this type of strategic thinkers. But typically strategic thinkers aren't strategic planners. They need people in their lives that are good at strategic planning. So planning is informed by strategic thinking, but provides a structure for the energy of strategic thinkers, linking outcomes of projects or individual or department work plans to governing compliance documents or mandates. So it's all linking this stuff together, and that's where my boss, Trina Vai, she's an accountant, that's where she comes in, right? So she makes sure that all of my plans and my ideas are fit within the mandates of the board, right? And that's how we can secure funding. So it's kind of the end. I'm just going to go through some pictures of this is the warehouse here, kind of an example of a typical day just of distribution. We have 3 distribution guys in the warehouse, 2 drivers, and 1 warehouse coordinator, and he does most of the logistics and the ordering. He's also got 35 years in the food industry. He owned his own restaurant, and he actually used to work for Pine Haven Colony as one of the salesmen and truck drivers. That's how I met him, as he was selling me beef for years, and then I hired him because he's brilliant. And that's him on the left there. And this is we were out fishing one day a couple of years ago, and we brought 75 pounds back from these. These are trout ponds, by the way. It's the gravel pit just outside of Maskwacis, and that's been turned into trout ponds. So typically, this is like a trout roe. Tastes like the bottom of the lake. This is our this is actually our deputy superintendent, Sheila or Sharon. Sorry, this is she used to be the principal of the outreach school. She built this remarkable program to improve academic success for some of these students that required like the outreach format of learning. Anyway, she's breaking down some moose meat there for dry meat. There's Dakota on the right there, and I can't remember his name. He's on the left, but they're two of our students that have gone through the program. This is Joseph. He student worked for us for a while. We're back in the warehouse. There's a picture of one of our trucks. We got 2 of those, and then we bought a 24-foot International so that we could procure more produce from the source. Essentially, we go to BC and pick up apples from the orchards in the fall. So we just brought back 32 watermelon bins of orchard run apples, and we're storing half of them at the Hutterites. We're using their cooler because our cooler obviously isn't big enough, and then we just plug in the 24-foot truck, and it's got I think it was something like 27,000 pounds of apples that we bought, and we got them for about 30 cents a pound. So the farmer was super happy because that was more than he was going to get by selling them to a middleman, and we were super happy because that's less than we would have got from retail. So going to the source, right? It's a win-win-win for everybody. Janice, learning how to toss pizza dough. We don't make round pizzas anymore. I used to do that every Friday. We do this for the 1,000 kids in Ermineskin, and we could knock it out with the round pizzas. And when we moved to a larger, our attendance has gone up, and we just do full sheet pan size pizzas now. But we're planting some trees. We like to do this thing, like planting every year. Saskatoon's choke cherries, apple trees. There's another picture of the lunch line. There's those pizzas that came out. Back when we did 1,000, like we'd have to do about 130 of those pizzas in order to get enough for everybody. There's an example of some, just typical, that's about for 1,000 people, just roast beef, yeah. We buy primal cuts of beef and we break them down if we need to. Typical salad bar, salad. I just thought it was particularly pretty that day. And once again, salad bars, every day. We don't skip a beat. We haven't for the last 10 years. And I'm a baker, so I like to show off my product. And these are an example of the apples we got. They're delicious. They're beautiful. Okay, that's XA for me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything. Hi. Yes?
Just a question, because I noticed that with our school program, and we always serve on a styrofoam plate.
Yeah.
And I think that's so harmful
Yes.
to the environment. And then so trying to think, well, if we're First Nations people and we're supposed to be looking after the environment, how am I supposed to balance feeding the kids and stuff like that? For one thing, so I looked out some of your pictures, and I saw some of them had metal plates.
Yes.
And then some of the cardboard ones.
Yep.
Is question number one. And number two is, you said milk is no longer part of the food guide,
Correct.
or
Yeah, I can elaborate on both of those.
Sure.
So the original intent for cutlery and plates was to have no disposables whatsoever. So in the first year, I sourced, plastic is tricky. Plastic plates and hot food is tricky because I don't know if you know, but it's actually illegal to manufacture utensils and anything to eat food off of in Canada that has melamine in it. But we can buy it by the container from China and sell it at Walmart or whatever. So even though it's illegal against regulations to use melamine as a hardener in plastic for our manufacturing in Canada, we can still sell it in the stores. So we didn't want plastic plates, no plastic plates. The next best, the best is actually stainless steel. However, they do look institutional. That's the drawback, and we have got some complaints about that. So we're actually looking at natural fiber stuff now for when we return to reusable plates and cutlery, probably in the next 4 months. And we're getting either bamboo fiber, or there's a corn fiber one, or there's even like wheat fiber. But yeah, the disposables were temporary, and they have to be temporary because we do teach students about environmental stewardship. It's in the curriculum, right? And then we go to the lunchroom and we eat off plastic and disposables, plastic and styrofoam disposables, which is like hypocritical, right? I totally get you. I totally feel it. So we're actually moving back towards using reusable plates and cutlery. We just have like 1 million paper ones that we got to get through. So, but at least they're compostable, right? So that was when we bought them. And then even like there's like a wax on the paper, and sometimes that's not biodegradable, even though they'll say they're compostable. We just had to make, and this one is, so it's vegetable-based kind of wax, and then there's, then they're made of paper, and then we don't have forks and spoons, we got sporks. So it was a bit of pushback from it, but it was a lot easier for us just to do sporks. And you can drink soup out of the little cups. We got little cups too, and the boats. But yeah, no, we do want to go back to reusable plates and cutlery. The second question was about the milk. So with the new food guide, before we got a new Canadian food guide, Brazil's food guide was about the best that I could identify in the world. And essentially, Brazil's food guide doesn't talk about food groups and categories and volumes of food because every human is different. They emphasize more less processed food is better, yeah? So essentially, that's kind of how I saw the new Canadian food guide, is that less processed food is better, and they eliminated the food categories. So milk is no longer like a category, a food group. It was only a food group because of the Dairy Association, right? and money. But there was, and talk about indigenous cuisine, nobody was milking bison 500 years ago, right? So, yeah, good luck, right? So we have no problems eliminating milk because we do have calcium and vitamin D and other sources. We have salad bars. Kids consume those like crazy, and we use dairy, like we use yogurt, we use cheese. It's not like we don't use dairy at all. We just like drinking milk is not necessary, I don't think, especially for our demographic. For drinks, water. Yeah, 100% water. In all of our schools, we have water filtration systems. And we're currently just upgrading them to a little better like system that needs less maintenance. But all of our schools have water filtration systems, and every student has a water bottle. And if they don't, or if the filtration system goes down, I do stock like bottled water that we distribute to the schools for emergencies. But water, and water. That's what we serve for beverages. Now, periodically, we'll have juice boxes come through for things like powwows and maybe like a feast day or something, special requests from special people. But they're not regularly available, yeah, because it's just sugar in a liquid form, right?
I have two questions. The first one being, do you have any tips to to get more help in the kitchen, like from students or from parents? And the second one is, how does your salad bar system work?
Okay, so the first question, it would kind of have to depend on what system are you referring to. Just need, yeah.
Well, like we're a K-8 school.
Okay.
So I was just wondering,
Okay.
like, how would we go about, like, if that was an
Yeah.
idea that we wanted to implement, how would
Yeah.
we, I
So-
guess, start it?
I feel you. So K-8 is pretty tricky. I don't think, in my world, it's not possible to have the students like heavily involved with the cooking or the clean. Like you have to have a teacher there dedicated to that, and that can get pretty hairy pretty quick. Kids throwing meat at each other, you know. It's just like we started at the grade 10 level in the kitchen. So the kids are like 15, right? At the youngest kids are like 15. That are working in the kitchen. However, like at the elementary schools, they do help with distribution and cleanup, but it's all very like teacher EA oriented. They need to be part of, like it's not a service we're providing. We're not like a caterer, right? Whereas it's this community school food program, like, and that means that we enlist the help of EAs, teachers, anybody. That's in the school building. We're not providing a service. If you don't like the food, you don't, I don't care. We do our best, and there's no refunds, you know. So, but at the community school food program, it kind of has this self-mitigating factor where the students are part of the preparation of the food, and so ultimately the outcome is student work, right? So lunch is student work every day, and so that needs to be respected as well as student work, right? Because the students are heavily involved with the preparation of the food at the high school level. But it's tricky getting the younger kids involved. And now parents, are you in urban setting or rural or?
We're in between, like, we're from Flying West First Nation.
Oh, okay, yeah. 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 I can tell you that I could count on one hand how many volunteers I've had over the last 10 years. Right. Yeah, we pay everybody. Yeah, so that has to be planned for, budgeted for, to get the help that you need. And we structure our program in a way that I'm working closely with the person who's making the financial decisions. She understands the food industry like I do, and we're in regular communication about the needs of the program. So, yeah. Oh, yes, sorry, the salad bar. What was the question about the salad bar? Oh, okay. So essentially, the students that have access to the salad bar, they need to be eating in a gathering area, right? Because you can't have a salad bar in every classroom. When we're sending food carts to the classroom, we have like a fruit salad, we have like an entree salad, like a Caesar salad or a tossed salad, and then we have the entree. But with the students that have access to the salad bars in the schools that we do have salad bars, I'll give you an example of the junior high. We have 2 salad bars there because there's like almost 400 kids there now. So we've got 2 salad bars, one at either end of the gathering area. The students line up, grab their entree, and then they disperse to 4 lines because the salad bar is 2 lines each, right? So then all the students, 400 kids, they come down, pick up their entree, and then they just go to the salad bar. Some of them go to the salad bar first, load up with fruits and vegetables and stuff, and then they come get their entree after because they don't want to stand in line. So it's kind of a free-for-all, but we have 2 salad bars, one on either side of the gathering area. In the smaller schools, there's just 1 salad bar, and they kind of basically set up a line, grab the entree, go through the salad bar. The smaller kids, they have to grab the entree, go sit down, then come back to the salad bar. Yep. Yep. Every day. Yep. 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 Yeah, every day. Nope. No problem. The funding. The funding is not special. There's no specialized funding. In fact, we cut out all of our grant donors because of like the reporting structures and everything that some of the grant organizations had was kind of restrictive for our purchasing. And so all of our funding comes from education dollars, and we don't get any more money than the public system. We have equitable funding finally after our amalgamation. Prior to the amalgamation, we were still able to allocate resources towards school food and not at the expense of other programs in the school. It was just the board identified it as important, and we planned. And then we had allocated budgets from education dollars. There's no special funding here, which is surprising for a lot of people because it can be done in every district in Canada. But the people that are making the decisions need to be planning, and for that, they need to get input from strategic thinkers.
I know you guys have a fairly awesome wild meat program. I'm just wondering if you could give us a little bit of information about how that works, who your hunters are.
I think you have me mistaken for Monsieur Clifford Gladue from Kataskanau Education Authority. It's okay because he's my homeboy.
Oh, cool.
We do serve wild meats in the schools, but we don't do it on a regular basis like Clifford does up north. Clifford is the king when it comes to wild meat. He started the program, and it's very successful up there. A couple different elements that make it more difficult for us is we are in central Alberta in the prairies. Our hunters have to go out to the mountains. Cliff, his hunters, like he's way up north. The whitefish we're talking about, like it's forest everywhere, right? So they have their through their year they have like they regularly it's normal for families to be eating wild meat. In a lot of ways, in Maskwacis, like we did an experiment. We had some wild meat come in for the pandemic, and we were putting it in the food hampers. And a lot of people just don't have the stomach for it anymore in Maskwacis. So while we do have the wild meat program, it's not to the extent that Cliff has it up north. But we are on the same page as him. We just he's got a much more successful inroad into that. Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure. You have to know what you're doing, and he's a hunter, and I'm a berry picker. So that's also out of my comfort zone, right? So I am working with community leadership to lead this because it's out of my wheelhouse. That's partly why we haven't pursued it, because I'm Muniao and I don't know what I need to. So there's a number of people in the community that are going to take the lead on that, which I am just hoping and praying that it happens soon. But that's the real reason. I just don't feel comfortable leading it up. However, there are, definitely special considerations. And we do have Cliff developed wild game guidelines for community programs document that they use to essentially train the hunters in the processes. And there's no government oversight. It's all based on actually the Alberta First Nations Food Sovereignty Declaration of 2016, where all the chiefs of Alberta Treaty 6 signed off on this document that was essentially declaring that Indigenous people in Canada are sovereign, and they don't need government agents coming in telling them what they can eat and what they can't eat. So that document, 2016, was used to undergird the Wild Game Guidelines for Community Programs document that Cliff developed in conjunction with Indigenous Services Canada. And essentially what all that means is that it set precedent for using wild game in schools without having health inspectors getting in your way. Yep.
Other questions?
Say patama. Hi.
Thank you very much, Scott, for. Oh, there is
Sorry, one question from the chat.
Oh, sure.
Pat's left us a nice comment here about vitamin D and dairy. Question at the end. Do you have concerns about children and youth who you are providing food for if you are not serving fluid milk or fortified plant-based beverages in terms of vitamin D
No,
and calcium,
no.
that kind of thing?
Not at all. Not at all. For 10,000 years, Indigenous people of Canada didn't drink dairy milk. Exe? Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
That was awesome. Alrighty. So thank you, Scott. That was very informative, and I think we all wish we had 10 years of that in our districts.